Hello, sovereign lovers. Happy Friday. Happy Feast of Saint Mary Magdalene. My name is Vanessa, and I welcome you today. We're going to have a little bit of a chat about Mary Magdalene and the energy of celebrating the Feast of Mary Magdalene. So I'm going to just jump right in. So for me, it's been interesting because I don't consider myself to be a religious person. I was raised Catholic, and I went along with the teachings of the Catholic Church as I was growing up, but it was not something that I really truly connected with on a deep level. For me, one of the greatest things that I connected with through my Mexican culture was Our Lady of Guadalupe, the Virgen de Guadalupe, which is very big in my lineage. My grandmother was very devoted to Our Lady of Guadalupe, my mother is, and so this was something that I really was connected to, even though I wasn't connected to the religious aspect of, even though I wasn't connected to the Catholic Church that much. And as I've been on this spiritual journey, I sort of had a bit of rejection of the church for a while, where I didn't feel comfortable with it. I felt that the church had a lot to do with colonization and the wiping out of indigenous cultures, especially my lineage through the Aztec cultures and the Mixtec culture. All of that was lost as a result of colonization and the coming in of the church. So I had a huge resistance to it. I didn't feel comfortable with it. And my husband was raised a born-again Christian, and he had a lot of biblical knowledge and information, and so we've had a very interesting relationship on this journey where I was reconnecting to my ancestral indigenous wisdom, and he was sort of deprogramming through going back in to his knowledge of the Bible. So it's been a very interesting journey for both of us. And recently I started coming into, what started coming into my awareness was the story of Mary Magdalene, and even for him as well. And so we've both kind of been on our separate paths of what that means to us. And I think it was about 2 years ago that I realized that there was actually a feast of Mary Magdalene. And so we've kind of honored that feast for the past couple of years, where we tune into the energy, and as we do more of this work, we're kind of taking it in through our own lens, through our filter of healing and spirituality. So through my interpretation, what this is, there's a lot of information coming up about Mary Magdalene, as Mary Magdalene being the apostle of the apostles, being one of the highest apostles during biblical times, during the time of Jesus. And there are some theories of her being the wife of Jesus. And there's so much data and so much information throughout history, and there are so many books written about it. And so it's very interesting to me that all of this information is coming up around this time. So one of the books that Danny read is Mary Magdalene Revealed by Megan Watterson. And I was actually reading a post that she shared today, and it was talking about how, and I thought it was really fascinating because it was talking about how the way Christianity went about the story of Jesus is they made him less human and more divine, more godly, and they made Mary Magdalene more human and more sinful, which is really fascinating because it's almost like this and they rejected her, right? So they rejected the feminine in this case and made her sinful, and then took the masculine and made him more godly. And we're coming into this age where we're tapping into the energy of Mary Magdalene, where we're connecting with her messages, and we're connecting, I believe that some of the information of her story has been uncovered, and people have been talking a lot more about the information about her message, Mary Magdalene's message. So it's really interesting, and I feel that what ends up happening is we're tapping in more to the feminine energies, the feminine darkness, that which has been buried and uncovered and covered up and deemed as sinful. And so the idea of Mary Magdalene being this whore that was sinful and that we must reject or look down upon. And right now we're bringing that back in. And I think that what that shows is that as a collective, we're starting to look at the shadows. We're starting to look at the things that we've buried, at the things that we've deemed as sinful, and bringing it into the light. Because from my understanding of Christianity, the idea of Jesus loving all people is loving even the sinners, even those that have been so marginalized, those that have been made to feel that they are far from God, when in reality it's all God, right? We're all God. Everybody is a child of God. And to reject a person because of the way that they behave or the way that they think or the way that they speak is to reject a part of God, because even that part is God, right? And so I think as we're starting to welcome in this energy of Mary Magdalene and accept Mary Magdalene as an apostle, as one of the disciples, as one of the leaders within this movement of the message of Christ, it's to bring it all into balance, right? Because we can't just have love and light. We have to also acknowledge the darkness and bring it in and allow it to show us the lessons. We can't learn about our own divinity without really recognizing or acknowledging our darkness. And I think that's really the energy that we're coming into right now. A lot of people are talking more about shadow work, are talking about our intuition, about looking at our traumas, and that is the work of the Magdalene energies, right? It's going into the darkness, going into the death and the rebirth, the balancing of the masculine and the feminine. And the masculine is very rigid and controlled, and we have these steps that we have to take, and the feminine is willing to go deep into the darkness, to flow with it, to experience it all, and then come out the other side. So there is a balance of both of these energies that's necessary in order for us to truly embody the messages of enlightenment, the messages of the Christ, the messages of however you want to look at it. And I think that this whole movement of bringing back women into the scene of connection to the divine is super important, right? That's part of the feminine. And I think what sometimes we fail to recognize, and what we try to do, is to create the energy, bring in the energy of the feminine in a masculine way. Like, women are allowed to come in, but we have to act in a masculine way. And I think that still creates an energy of imbalance, right? The feminine ways are the ways of intuition, of connecting to our womb spaces. And there's so many people connecting right now to their womb spaces, connecting to their intuition. I know for me, I was very disconnected from my intuition, very disconnected from my womb and the power that was held in my womb space. So as I've done this work of healing, I've had to go through the darkness. I've had to acknowledge any trauma that existed in my womb, any trauma that existed that was stored in this space of creation. And there's a whole movement right now of women connecting to their cycles, of women connecting to their womb space, of women connecting to their blood. And once all of this starts coming back in and we start acknowledging that these are not things to be dismissed or cast aside or made to feel that they're an inconvenience, but instead part of the process, the more we come into balance and harmony with all of existence and all that is, with all of the cycles, I think. So that's my little story, and those are my thoughts regarding the Magdalene mysteries and the Feast of Mary Magdalene. And I think that right now we're in this energy of this summer energy, this energy of coming forward. And I think it's so important to bring in that balance, that cyclical energy. And now is the time to really tap into our intuition. One of my teachers in the Aztec tradition says that any feast, any celebration of any Mary in the church, particularly the Catholic Church does the feasts of the different Marys, but any feast of a Mary is a feast in honor of our Mother Earth. And so on a day like today, it would be great to honor our Mother Earth, honor the mother of all creation, because that's really what any of the Marys embody. They embody creation. They embody the mysteries of creation, right? When we bring forth new life, that is creation, whether you're bringing forth a new life in the form of a child or an idea or of any type of creative project, that is the energy of creation. So it's a great time to tap into that. Today I also decided I would do a reading with the Mary Magdalene Oracle. So I'm going to pull a couple of cards and see what messages we get today, and tap into the energy and the intuition and the knowledge of Mary Magdalene. And I invite you to tap into the energy of your womb space, the energy of your intuition. Tap into that darkness. A few weeks ago at Pork Fest, we did a women's circle, and we had all the women in the circle sit quietly and close our eyes and put our hands over our womb space and take a few deep breaths and ask our womb what it needed. And for a lot of the women in the circle, it was the first time they were actually paying attention to their womb space. And for me, I think the very first time I did that, I didn't hear anything because I was so disconnected. And now I have a tendency to tap in more. I also recognize more when something doesn't feel right for me. I tend to feel it in my womb space. I've had times where I'm having a conversation and something doesn't feel comfortable and I feel a very sharp pain in my womb. So it's really interesting once you start paying attention once you start giving your womb a voice. So that is my invitation for you today. And let's do 3 cards. I dropped one. Oops. Here we go. All right. The first card is transformation. So I'm actually going to read these because I don't know them. Let's see. Transformation says, your world may seem like it has turned upside down, yet rest assured there is no need for concern. A positive transformation related to work, study, or finances is now occurring. Keep calm and allow the storm to clear, for when it does, you shall discover that things have been rearranged for the better. Do not fear the changes taking place, for change is a necessary part of life. With every ending comes a new beginning. Trust and be prepared to lovingly let go of the past. If there is one certainty in life, is that your life will continue to transform as it magically unfolds. Though you may feel unsettled and unsure at present, try to be as flexible in your thinking and be open to new ideas. A bright future awaits. So that was the transformation card. And again, this goes back into the Magdalene energies, this concept of death and rebirth, which is a very feminine cyclical concept. Anytime there is new life, something has to end. So when we're in a process of transformation, we have to be willing to allow things to die in order to welcome new things. The next card is Divine Order. And let's see what that one says. Divine Order. You may be inadvertently sinking into depression because you believe the world around you is in disarray. With all its suffering, destruction, and war, the world can seem like a woeful place. Yet, as the saying goes, there is a time and purpose for everything under heaven. Everything serves a purpose and has a reason for being, otherwise that thing would not exist. Life is like a divine tapestry. Each thread is vital to the overall picture. However, being a divine tapestry, the overall design only begins to make sense when viewed from a higher perspective. Believing that things are not the way they should be only serves to keep you disappointed, angry, and fearful. Divine order is visible, but it is only visible through the perspective of love, just as the true purpose of things can only be known by the light of your soul. Your world doesn't need saving, it just needs to be loved. And so, hi Julie! So this divine order card, I think, is so perfect in terms of the Mary Magdalene mysteries, in that we do have a tendency to have an attachment to the way things are supposed to look, right? And that's the thing with this whole concept of Mary Magdalene being seen as sinful. She doesn't look like what we expect her to look like, what we expect a divine, perfect, biblical character to be. She is seen as messy, as sinful, as not holy enough. And the thing is that we have to truly be willing to understand and trust in the divine order of things, that there's a purpose for everything. There's a purpose for every single being within this construct, within this concept of all of humanity, all of existence. There is a divine order to it. And so the tiniest rock has a piece in this order. And when we try to control something or say this is not holy enough, we're dismissing the order. We're dismissing the parts that we don't like because they don't seem proper to us. And I think never be too holy. Yes. So that's the thing, right? I think one of the things that Danny and I have shared about our journey is that it has been completely imperfect and perfectly imperfect in that way. We both actually have Enso circles tattooed on our wrists, and an Enso circle is a brush. It's a brush stroke that creates a circle which isn't fully closed. I don't know if it's a little hard to see. It's kind of open, but it's the concept of we have just this one chance to live this life, right? And it's perfectly imperfect. It's beautiful in its imperfection. And if Danny and I hadn't gone through the darkness that we went through in our relationship, we wouldn't have experienced the level of bliss that we get to experience now. It is through that darkness that we found each other and ourselves. And so that's the concept of the divine order, is in understanding that even the dark parts, even the sinful parts, are necessary to this existence. Yes, we are absolutely worthy, Julie. We are perfectly imperfect. And all of it is necessary. All of it is absolutely necessary. And I love this concept of, you know, we think of God as this perfect being. And if God is this perfect being that created this perfect world, then everything in the world is imperfection. Every single thing is imperfection. Everything has a reason for existing and for being and for creating perhaps conflict in our lives. Even the conflict is perfection. So the last card is miracles. And we will see what miracles says. Your determination, commitment, and perseverance is about to pay off, and all you have worked towards will soon manifest. It will soon be time to celebrate your achievements. However, you are cautioned not to get too elated. Thank the universe for all you achieve and keep focused. Do not lose sight of your original purpose and intentions. Keep in mind that all you do should not only serve you, but also those around you. In doing this, the universe will continue to guide you and offer its assistance. Visualize your work and influence reaching larger numbers of people. Imagine this happening with ease and only in ways that make you feel comfortable. It takes no more effort to think big than to think small, and remember that a miracle is always possible no matter what situation you find yourself in. So that is today's Mary Magdalene reading from the Magdalene Oracle. Transformation. Remember that in order to transform, we have to be willing to let go of the things that no longer fit the cycle that we're creating, no longer fit the new earth that we're creating. And so that means honoring those cycles of transformation, honoring the letting go and bringing in new life. The next one is the divine order, which is to also remember that there's perfection in the imperfection, that all of it serves a purpose, the darkness and the light. Without the darkness, there would be no light. So we have to honor all of it. It is all in divine perfection. I've shared this story, but a couple of years ago, I was driving to a friend's house, and it was raining, and I was listening to Bob Marley, and this guy cut me off. He was on his bicycle, and he just kind of cut me off and kind of jolted me for a second, because I was really shocked that he really cut me off. He didn't stop at the stoplight, and I could have kept going and hit him. And luckily I didn't, but it jolted me in the moment. And then I realized, I had this like deep realization that it was such a divine moment, right? We had crossed paths at this precise time, that two people on this planet with billions of people could come together at the exact same time in this perfect moment. And it's something that I can't even put into words, but it was this feeling of divine perfection, of the divine understanding that every moment is beautifully crafted and every moment serves its purpose. And even the moments that feel frustrating, that feel trying, that feel difficult, all serve a purpose. And I was so grateful that day. I started crying. I was bawling the rest of my way home, because I was like, this is so beautiful. It's so perfect. The divine timing, the divine order of this universe is so perfect, that we cross paths with certain people when we do, that we hear the words that we're meant to hear at the precise time that we needed to hear them. It just goes to show that there's a divine order. And when we are willing to trust in that, we're willing to accept even the ugly and recognize that something is going to come out of this ugly, that we're meant to go through that. And so there's beauty in that. And of course, trusting in the miracles, trusting that there's everything. Like I said, when there's a divine order, it's all a miracle. It's all beautiful. And when we have that trust, when we have that intention in the work that we're doing, in the steps that we're taking, miracles can unfold. And we have the ability to create those miracles as well. So that is today's reading on the day of the Feast of Saint Mary Magdalene. I hope that you all take the time today to connect to your own inner intuition, to your own inner darkness, to your own womb space or hara space, to connect to the divine feminine, whether you're connecting with nature or connecting with the divine feminine within, because we all carry that, and recognize that the shadows are here to teach us lessons as well, when we're willing to open up to them and listen to them and hear the messages that they have to share for us. And I'm so grateful for the story of Mary Magdalene, of this so-called sinful character that has re-emerged in a different light, and we're kind of accepting that. At least for me, I feel like I'm accepting the story regardless of what the ultimate truth is. The ultimate truth is that as divine feminine energies, we can shift into the different areas, into the different shadows, and do the job that's necessary regardless of how we're seen to the external world. So I send you all many blessings today. Thank you for being here. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Yasmin. And thank you, anybody who listens to this afterwards. I hope you have a beautiful day and a happy Friday. Bye.
Hello, Sovereign Lovers. I just wanted to do a quick live as a follow-up to the live that my beautiful wife did earlier on the Feast of Mary Magdalene. And I wanted to talk a little bit about my connection to the Magdalene. I grew up a born-again Christian, and I always had a very strong connection to Jesus, to the Christ. And Mary Magdalene was always seen in the church as kind of like this pitied character in a way. Pitied because she was so sinful, right? And the way she's portrayed in the kind of four main gospels that were included in the Bible, it's really, she has a very kind of minor role, She is... The feeling I always got, maybe this came more, not so much from the Bible as the kind of the churches that I was going to, their interpretation and how they preached about Magdalene, was that she was kind of pitied, like she's a sinner and she's going to be stoned by the Jewish authorities, and the Christ comes in and he saves her, but it's kind of seen as Jesus is having mercy on her. Let he who has not sinned cast the first stone. And so since nobody can, since everybody's a sinner, nobody can cast the stone, and she doesn't get stoned. But it's almost like the way they preach it, she deserves to be stoned. She's a sinner, but because the rest of us are sinners too, none of us have the authority to judge her. But the Christ has the authority to judge her, but he forgives her. So it's seen as a very, it's a story of grace, right? Of Christ having grace for this sinner. And when you read some of the other Gospels, I've read the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, and I've read the Gospel of St. Thomas. And when you do some more historical research on Magdalene, there are a lot of theories. One of them is that she was a priestess in the temple of Isis, and that she was some say she was a temple prostitute. And I think that's a little bit, the words that they translate to kind of give a false impression of what that really means. A temple prostitute. This is more of a priestess, a tantric priestess, is really probably a more accurate way to describe the historical context of that theory, right? She was preaching or teaching and initiating people into the Tao, what is now known as the Taoist, and back then I'm sure it was as well because it predates Christianity, right? She was really teaching Taoist tantric principles, and that's not necessarily all about sex, it's about energy. But they believe that our sexual energy is that primal life force energy, what Star Wars would call the Force, or what we would call, Christians would call the soul, or God, or the Holy Spirit maybe, right? It's kind of our connection through our soul to God, that force, the breath of life, right? God breathed life into Adam and Eve. And that's really what the Taoists would call life force energy, or chi, or all these different things, all these different words that we have to describe that in different traditions. So she was a priestess of that, of divinity, really, of our divine nature. And I've read a lot of books on her since, and I really feel that, well, let me go back to the Bible to kind of really set the stage more. So the way I was taught in my Christian upbringing was that she was just kind of like a side character, right? She's there at the crucifixion, and she's with the Mother Mary, and they're crying at Jesus' feet, and but she's also there. She's the first one to see him when he resurrects. This is a major character. This is not somebody who is just a minor character that is just like, yeah, she happened to be there. She happened to be the first one to see him resurrected. Christ chose Mary Magdalene to be the first person he appeared to after his resurrection. That's no small thing. In my mind, that's no small thing. That's like a major thing. So if you kind of put all this into context, I think that really more likely the role she had, and there's also theories about them being married and that she carried his child and fled to France and gave birth to the Merovingian bloodline. And honestly, I haven't done a lot of research on that aspect of it. But I think what I believe, and the reason I think I believe this is because I've experienced a lot of this in my own relationship with Vanessa. I believe that the Magdalene was a balancing force in the life of Christ. So here comes Jesus. There's some historical information that he was trained in Greek philosophy, that he studied Eastern religions. During his time, the time of his preaching, he was the time where the school of Athens was huge, and this was kind of a logic, and philosophy was it's a very masculine energy, and this was the predominant energy of the culture at that time. So, and we can see it reflected in the way Christ preached his message. He used a lot of parables, but they were all based on logic. And so here comes the Magdalene, and I believe that, and she's now called in some circles the Apostle of the Apostles. And so I believe the Magdalene helped Christ to be baptized into a more feminine, intuitive, compassionate. Excuse me, I'm out of breath because it is hot today. It's a hot day in Brooklyn. I think she helped Christ to soften his very masculine, logical philosophy, and bring in a more compassionate force so that he could balance. She helped him to balance his masculine and feminine. And I believe Christ helped Magdalene to also balance her masculine and feminine. I believe it was a co-creative effort that I believe she's really the feminine Christ. She is the other side of the coin, the masculine to his feminine, the feminine to his masculine. And I think when you dig into these other texts that Constantine or the Council of Nicaea decided these texts don't belong in the canon, in the Bible, as we know it today. But when you look at these other texts, you really see that the Magdalene understood, specifically in the Gospel of Thomas. He talks about this scene where Jesus is teaching the apostles, and Magdalene is getting it. She's getting all these concepts, and she's really like resonating with it, and she's asking all the right questions and the Christ keeps like, yeah, you're getting it. And Peter starts to get really frustrated and upset. And he's like, why is this woman being allowed to talk? Why is she, being allowed to ask all these questions and have this input? She's disrespecting our rabbi. She's disrespecting Jesus by asking these questions. Because I believe at that time, the women were seen as second-class citizens and were not given the same space as men to participate. Certainly not in philosophical debate in Athens. So I'm sure there was a lot of that cultural influence. So here Magdalene comes in, and she's taking a very active role in helping Christ teach this message. Some even believe that she came from a really wealthy family and that she was funding a lot of the ministry of Christ and the apostles. And so maybe there was a little bit of jealousy about that. Certainly some patriarchal influence where it seems Peter certainly, and I believe from the writings of Paul probably would have resented her participation in Christ's ministry. So, where am I at? All right, so Magdalene as a balancing figure, helping Jesus really tap into the feminine aspects of God, because I believe she had been really studying that. She was initiated, if these myths are true, and she was an initiated priestess of the temple of Isis. This was a temple that was dedicated to the feminine aspect of God. And here she was initiated and a priestess, so she would have really had a firm grasp on those feminine aspects and feminine energies. And Christ, who was trained in, he certainly was trained in some of the feminine as well, because he studied those Eastern religions. There are some theories and evidence that he actually went to study in Buddhist temples. So he certainly would have learned some feminine influence there, but I think it was his relationship with Magdalene that helped to really embody that and be the Christ figure, the balanced figure of masculine and having philosophy and a doctrine, if you will, but also being compassionate. Love everyone as you love yourself, and love being really the core of his message. And the reason I really believe that and resonate with that is that that's what I experienced in my relationship with Vanessa. I was also a very logical minded, very masculine. I've always been emotional, probably a little bit more emotional than maybe your average guy. But I didn't have balanced emotions, right? I was either super logical or super emotional, like extremist emotional, where a lot of times it would be a shadow masculine, right? Where it's a temper or judgments or, very harsh and intense emotions, manipulation, all of those aspects. And my relationship with Vanessa has her being so tapped into her feminine, into her intuition, into being more empathetic. She is naturally an empathetic person. She has a much more developed empathic sense. And so she has really, my relationship with her and the back and forth and the conflicts that we've had, she has slowly kind of encouraged and taught me and inspired me to embody more of a balanced masculine and feminine. And I know some people might be triggered. Oh, feminized men. They're turning men into women. Bring back, I saw a shirt the other day, make men men again. And I really think that a balanced masculine and feminine, the ability to be in a logical place, to have discipline and an organized energy, like a discipline, right? To kind of rein in the emotional flow, to be able to have our emotions, express our emotions, but in a healthy way, not where we're just kind of like vomiting and spewing our emotions all over those we come in contact with. And that's kind of the place that I was in, where I didn't have that. So not only has Vanessa helped me to balance my, I guess that's really what it is, right? She helped me get into a more feminine, empathetic, compassionate space, which reordered my masculine and healed my masculine in a way where I no longer need to be in one of those, I'm not totally healed, so it still happens sometimes, but I'm certainly a much more balanced masculine and feminine now. And I think that's really the true mark of a well-balanced human, not just making a man a real man, whatever that means, but just being a balanced human where you can have emotions, you can express them in a healthy way so that you're not suppressing. I like to say that if you're not expressing what you feel, you're going to suppress it. So expression is hugely important, but it needs to be done, or it would be best for it to be done in a healthy, balanced way where you're not infringing on other people's boundaries, right? If we are crossing others' boundaries with our emotions by vomiting them out, then we're infringing on their sovereignty. And for us to be truly sovereign, we have to stay within our own energetic fields. And that's another lesson that I believe that the Magdalene probably taught Christ, or at least helped him to embody. Because I think we can understand things on an intellectual level, but it's a balance between the intellect and the heart that helps us really embody those energies. So I just really wanted to express my gratitude to the Magdalene, to the feminine, divine feminine energy that has helped me become a more balanced human being, a healthier emotionally and spiritually human being, and express my love and gratitude to my wife for embodying that divine feminine and helping me to get to this place and guiding me in many ways. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you to all of you feminine carriers of the feminine energy, whether you identify as male or female or any other gender is really irrelevant. It's about the energy you're carrying. And so thank you to all of you who carry that feminine I know many beautiful men who also carry a very balanced masculine feminine energy that have been very inspiring to me as well. So thank you, and happy Feast of Magdalene. Today is also not coincidentally, I forget the exact name of it, but it's a day that Venus was honored as well. So in that tradition, and I believe it's really the same energy. The Magdalene, Venus, Isis, these are all manifestations of the divine aspect, the feminine aspect of the divine. So thank you, and I hope you have a wonderful the rest of the day and a beautiful weekend. So